On the 5th anniversary of our marriage, my wife's male assistant tweeted. I noticed my misplaced wedding ring on his ring finger in the picture. The words, "With you for the rest of my life, please take care of me," didn't cause my heart to tremble much. My wife called me a few seconds after I liked the post and left a comment that read, "Wish you happiness, but the ring doesn't look quite right." She said, "What are you doing? Why are you arguing with a child? I was just letting him wear your wedding ring for fun. Why do you have to be so petty?" The little assistant on the other end of the phone moaned pitifully. My wife gave him gentle consolation. I hung up the phone and said, "Don't worry about him. He's useless without me." In the end, 5 years of love had turned into a farce. I turned around and walked away, leaving the divorce papers on the table. Chapter 1. It was past midnight when Joanna got home. I could smell the strong alcohol on her as soon as she walked through the door. I cleaned the mess on the table in silence, not even raising my gaze. After 5 hours of waiting, the steak on the table was already cold. The uncorked wine had waited so long that it now resembled aged vinegar. I sat down and casually put the cold steak in my mouth after removing the candles from the table. It was Wagyu beef of superior quality, very costly. When Joanna saw it, she sneered. "If you ask me, you're just so unrefined," she replied. She waved the bag in her hand as she said, "Why are you holding on to a cold piece of meat? Just throw it away." As she spoke, her words were a little slurred. "Look, I brought you something to eat. This is from Domi, especially for you. Really, you're already this old, and you're still less mature than a guy who's just started working." She has rarely drunk to the point of losing control like this since she got to her current job. I remained silent and kept eating the steak by myself without answering. She slapped the plate in front of me, toppling it, and appeared somewhat displeased. Her eyes were blurry with anger as she put both hands on the table. "Eat, eat, eat. You still have the nerve to eat. Don't you realize that because you've been sarcastic in his comment section, how is he supposed to hold his head high in front of his coworkers? He's just a guy who needs love. What's wrong with that? I warn you, apologize to him right now." While she was speaking, she took out her cell phone and called Dominic's number. Dominic picked up almost immediately. His overly dramatic voice made me sick. "What's up, sis? It's been so short since we parted already, and I'm missing you." I was unable to even put the steak in my mouth. A warm smile quickly replaced Joanna's icy expression. She pushed the phone in front of me and said, "Domi, you're such a good boy. I'm teaching Romeo a lesson for you right now. Be good, and I'll make him apologize to you." I continued to chew mechanically without even looking up. With a tone full of authority, Joanna slammed her hand down on the table in anger. On the other end of the phone, Dominic said something that softened Joanna's expression and caused a hint of shyness to creep into her tone. "Romeo, did you not hear me apologize? You're over 10 years older than him, and you still don't know basic manners. Don't you feel ashamed that Domi specially bought you dinner? Do you even know how to be grateful? Ah, didn't I just reward you, you little rascal?" I would have likely erupted in rage if I had previously overheard her speaking in such a manner to another man. Now, though, all I wanted to do was use my knife and fork to stealthily shove piece after piece of cold, hard steak into my mouth. Joanna reluctantly hung up the phone after they had been talking for 20 minutes. She said, "Baby," with such familiarity. "All right, baby, you hang up first." I was compelled to gaze up at her. When our gazes locked, I noticed a brief moment of uneasiness in her eyes. However, she quickly lost her temper and asked, "What are you looking at?" "It's just a nickname. What's the big deal?" I calmly nodded. Joanna looked at me for a moment, possibly feeling uncomfortable, and then said, "Indeed, there's no need to care." "I'll go heat up the food. Don't eat that cold steak. The food from their place is pretty good," she said, after clearing her throat a few times. She then picked up the bag and headed into the kitchen. She spent more than 20 minutes in the kitchen, even though it was only a few minutes to reheat some food. As I was ready to take my plate to the sink after finishing the steak, I saw that Joanna had her phone in one hand, staring at the screen with a glazed expression, and the freshly heated food in the other. I approached her and looked at the phone's illuminated screen. Someone named Baby wrote, "Joe, I miss you so much. Do you realize that I did it on purpose even though I was intoxicated? All I wanted was to wake up beside you in bed and fall into your arms." Chapter 2. I was overcome with a wave of goosebumps that made me shiver. How Joanna could possibly fall for such a greasy and repulsive man was beyond me. Joanna put the food down and typed a quick response, still not realizing I was there. "A good boy, sister, will make time for you." She turned around and struck me squarely in the chest just as she was ready to send it. "Ah, what are you doing?" Joanna exclaimed in surprise upon recognizing me. She promptly tucked her phone behind her back, her voice brimming with fury. Her face twisted in a grimace as she attempted to hide her nervousness with a fierce demeanor. "Why are you sneaking up on me? Are you trying to spy on me and snoop through my phone?" she asked. She pushed me away and pushed the hot food into my hands, but I remained silent and didn't answer. I put the plate down and threw the steak knife and fork in the sink. "Eat this," I said, "because Domi picked it out especially for you. I'm not hungry." However, a spoonful of food was abruptly placed against my lips as I turned around. "Is eating just one bite going to kill you?" Joanna gave me a fierce look. I rubbed my forehead in frustration and said, "We're not done if you don't eat it today." To get her to stop bothering me, I had just intended to comply. However, I smelled peanut butter just as I opened my mouth. Before I could close my mouth, Joanna propelled the spoon forward, nearly squeezing it down my throat. Joanna swallowed the food before I could even taste it or chew it. This was terrible. In an attempt to gag and clear my throat, I shoved her away and hurried to the trash can. Joanna, however, wasn't content. As I coughed, my eyes landed on the food container she was holding. "What's your problem? This is Domi's kindness, and you're treating it like this." She yanked my arm and complained angrily, saying, "You're in your 30s and still don't know how to appreciate things. I'm telling you, if you don't eat all of it today, we're getting a divorce." I noticed the thick layer of peanut butter and the peanuts strewn on top right away. Joanna's threat crushed my heart. I couldn't wait any longer because the pain in my stomach was getting worse, and she didn't realize I had a peanut allergy after all these years. I hurried out of the kitchen after pushing her away and getting to my feet. Joanna was now even more enraged. Ignoring her, I began looking around the living room. "You're pushing me. Do you still have the nerve to be angry? Where are you going? Come back and finish the food." However, I was unable to locate the medicine cabinet that I usually kept in the coffee table drawer. Joanna asked, "What are you doing?" But I didn't respond. I simply continued my desperate search for the medicine cabinet. My head was spinning from the intense pain and constriction in my chest, and I was barely able to stand. Joanna hesitated for a second, her brows furrowed. I couldn't afford to argue with her. "It can't be. Are you trying to tell me the food's poison just to badmouth Domi?" "Romeo, when did you become this low?" My skin was starting to flush, and I started coughing uncontrollably due to the oppressive sensation in my chest. Joanna became alarmed upon seeing this. "What's wrong with you? Medicine? Give me the medicine?" After some difficulty, I finally managed to utter the words. Joanna's expression became awkward, as if she had realized something. Chapter 3. The shock of the situation seemed to shake Joanna out of her inebriation. "Well, Domi and I just moved to a new place, and I was worried he might not have a medicine cabinet, so you don't worry. I'll take you to the hospital right now." She scrambled to get me up quickly. We staggered down the stairs and I opened the car's back seat when we got to the garage. However, I froze as soon as I peered inside. Crumpled tissues littered the floor in front of the seat. Moreover, a pair of men's underwear, evidently thrown there in a hurry, was prominently displayed on the seat's backrest. Joanna also saw it, and her expression changed at once. As she attempted to explain, she stumbled. When I looked at the underwear, I noticed a stain on the fabric that could only have resulted from recent use. A few days ago, Domi and I went swimming. I guess he must have forgotten it when he changed clothes. I had a mental image of Joanna and Dominic entangled with one another in the back of the car. However, I couldn't care less about her excuses at that moment due to the oppressive sensation in my chest. Feeling weak, I sat down and hurriedly threw the tissues and underwear out of the car window. Joanna was furious and hurried to retrieve the underwear and fold it carefully. "What are you doing?" she asked. After that, she put it in her bag. Her disregard for the underwear was glaringly obvious, but I was too exhausted to argue with her. This is a designer brand. It wasn't cheap. Domi just got promoted, so buying this wasn't a small expense. You can't just throw it away. After all, what good is it to care about a woman who has already gone bad? Joanna's phone rang as we got closer to the hospital. Before answering the phone, she took a quick look at the caller ID, applied the brakes, and parked the car on the side of the road. The small car felt even more claustrophobic as Dominic's pathetic voice echoed from the other end of the line. "Sis, I'm feeling so sick in my stomach. Can you come be with me? I can't sleep without you by my side." "All right, I'm coming now," Joanna said with hardly any hesitation. She swung the vehicle around and drove away from the hospital. I had to laugh at myself, saying, "Hang on, Romeo. Domi really needs me right now. I have to go." Dominic's desire was therefore more pressing than my allergic reaction that almost killed me. Chapter 4. Joanna warned me not to move around when the car came to a stop, and then she quickly went upstairs. In an attempt to relieve the oppressive weight in my chest, I forced myself to breathe while I was alone in the car. Joanna, however, might have been concerned that I would cause problems by locking the car. After a few minutes, my face appeared pale in the rearview mirror as I began to perspire icily. I knew I needed to get to the hospital as soon as possible. With my phone in hand, I called emergency services. However, the paramedics were unable to get to Joanna when they got there. Ultimately, they decided to smash the window at my suggestion. Following an examination at the hospital, the doctor's expression darkened. After giving it some thought, I called my company assistant and said, "Your allergic reaction is severe. If you had waited any longer, it could have been life-threatening. Given how low your oxygen levels are, I recommend you stay in the hospital for observation. You should also have someone at home to look after you." Joanna didn't send me any messages during the whole ordeal. She didn't give me a call until the following morning. It was already 7 a.m. when I looked at the time. It appeared that she had only thought of me after having a wonderful time with Dominic. My resentment grew as I said, "Romeo, are you crazy? Why did you smash the car? What if it was stolen by bad people?" She brought up the car first, which made me think she might feel bad. She did not acknowledge that she had locked me in the car when I was extremely allergic. Joanna softened a little when she heard my blunt response. "So, you only called because of the car? I bought the car myself. If it's damaged, then so be it. Work." I couldn't help but scoff and shake my head. "I'm not mad, honey. Besides, it's our joint property. I'm just a little irritated because I couldn't get to work without the car." I stayed as cold as ice as she spoke with such enthusiasm. Domi said there's a great place for soup dumplings. "The house is too boring. I'll come to the office to find you and bring you breakfast. Since the car's broken, you should just stay at home and rest." She appeared to have completely forgotten about the car incident involving me. Joanna became irate as soon as I said, "No need to bother. Just take care of your Domi." "What's with the attitude? It's just that I forgot to leave you in the car." "Why didn't you call me? Why smash the car? Domi cares about you, and he asked me to bring you breakfast, and you still won't appreciate it." I looked clearly irritated. Joanna said sharply, her lovely face contorted in rage, "I'm not hungry. I don't feel like eating." Romeo, you're just jealous of Domi, aren't you? We're just siblings. What's wrong with me staying at his place? You have such a dirty mind thinking everything is suspicious. We're innocent, so you better stop making trouble for yourself. Chapter 5. I met Joanna in college. She was a year younger than me and a dance major. She was the one pursuing me at the time. I found it nearly impossible to resist her enthusiasm. As they say, when a woman chases a man, it's like a veil of gauze. I couldn't resist falling in love with her. I made a self-promise to treasure her, hold her in my palm, and provide for her as best I could. I asked my father to help her join my company since she had always had a strong desire to launch her own company. I ensured that I facilitated her professional growth by providing the necessary guidance when needed. She didn't need to know that I was responsible for everything. All I wanted was for her to be content. However, her conceit increased along with her status. She now blatantly cheated on me, and even attempted to use PUA techniques to control me. Joanna was still complaining nonstop during the video call. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly when I saw how swollen her lips were. She appeared to have remembered to entangle herself with Dominic before heading out. Anyway, you should try to be more magnanimous. Your current life wouldn't be possible without my efforts. I'm the one supporting you, not so you can fight with me. I didn't respond or argue. I secretly questioned whether or not I had done enough for her over the years. I had even been covertly helping her family. Joanna paused when she heard this. It's fine, that's your freedom. I won't interfere. How else could she have moved to Beijing immediately after graduating as an art student? Her face flashed with uncertainty. She sounded as though she couldn't believe what she had heard. I hung up and reclined in my hospital bed. I couldn't help but scoff and shake my head at my assistant's attempt to console me, saying, "Boss, don't be angry. It's normal for young girls to enjoy life. When she gets bored, she'll naturally come back to the family." It's impossible that Joanna will change. I've seen her flirt with other men on multiple occasions over the years. With her trainer at the gym. She enjoys receiving full-body spa treatments from male therapists in massage rooms, along with numerous other activities. I'll let her be since she enjoys having a wonderful time. I had to leave the hospital early after a few days in order to go to a significant event. Joanna hadn't sent me a message while I was in the hospital. All I could see were records of consumption. She had purchased numerous upscale men's goods. In my opinion, they weren't for me. I went straight to my office when I got back to the company. When I opened the door, I found Joanna crouched between Dominic and the couch, his legs spread wide. Dominic quickly got to her feet upon hearing the commotion. Without turning her head, Joanna reprimanded me with her back to me. "Who's there? Don't you know how to knock?" "It's me," I said quietly. Joanna shuddered and spun around, her eyes glimmering with shock and rage. Why are you back? I thought you were in the hospital." "You discharged without telling me. I was planning to find time to visit you. Really," I grumbled. Her face changed as she hurriedly attempted to clarify. "What do you mean Domi just had something stuck on his pants. I was just wiping it off. Nothing happened." I looked at Dominic, whose attire matched the purchase records on my phone. "Wasn't I the one who was busy? Didn't you have time to see me?" she asked. "It's fine, I believe you," I said in a tone devoid of any emotion. However, that unnerved Joanna. Unsure of what to say next, she stammered. Diego, Joanna's younger brother, entered at that precise moment. Chapter 6. Diego, Joanna's brother, has been working at my company since his graduation. "Romeo, I need to talk to Dominic. Could you let him come out for a moment?" Despite his lack of seniority, I had promoted him because he had far better business sense than Joanna. I was aware that he was here to support his sister. After giving the group a quick glance, I turned to go. One of the company's longtime employees was having a retirement party today, and I had a reservation at a 5-star hotel. All of the company's executives were present. Joanna, however, insisted on taking Dominic with her. She pulled Dominic into the car and said, He's my assistant. What's wrong with that? I caught a faint sound of Diego lowering his voice and reprimanding her, saying, "Sis, this is a big event. Why are you bringing him along?" Joanna said contemptuously, "It's just a dinner? I want Domi to see the world. What's the big deal?" Diego gave me a strange look. "It doesn't matter. It's just one more pair of chopsticks." I shrugged nonchalantly, which caused discomfort for the 3 people in the car. The hotel manager smiled as soon as we got there and took a seat. When I was perplexed, "Miss Joanna, would you like the wine you have stored here to be brought up?" I had never been here before, and this place had just opened, so I was unaware of any wine that was kept here. Before I could respond, Dominic said nonchalantly, "Yes, bring it up." I realized then that he was the gentleman the manager had been referring to. Longtime workers of the company looked at one another. Joanna's awkward expression was evident as she kept her head down. I recognized the brand as soon as the wine arrived. The wine in question is a white wine from the Romane Conti region. The price of a single bottle is thousands of dollars. I gave a small smile. Joanna's face became a little uncomfortable when someone said, "Thanks to Joanna's generosity, we're now able to taste wine worth thousands of dollars." Everyone in the room was shrewd enough to remain silent, despite being fully aware of the situation. Domi used to be a wine sommelier overseas. I just wanted him to taste it so that we wouldn't end up with a counterfeit one. I went outside to answer a call after a few rounds of food and beverages. My assistant and several other people were pouring wine into Dominic's glass when I got back. They appeared to be taking this action to ease some of my annoyance. "Enough! All of you, can't you see? Domi's already had too much to drink. He has a stomach condition." "This is going to be a problem," Joanna said sharply, her face darkening as she snatched the wine glass out of Dominic's hand and drank it all at once. As I watched this, I couldn't help but remember a bygone era. Long nights of mingling had caused me to get a stomach ulcer. I had to go to an inescapable business meeting before I recovered. Joanna and I went together, and I had to make myself drink in order to face our clients' toasts. However, after only a few drinks, I experienced severe pain and a churning stomach. I turned to Joanna for support, but she just gave me a contemptuous look. "How embarrassing. You need your wife to shield you from drinking. If you can't handle your alcohol, you'd better practice more. Otherwise, no one will want to dine with you in the future." I believed it to be her way of thinking. However, I now see that it all came down to the individual. Joanna was on the verge of losing it and yanking Dominic's hand away. However, she instinctively relaxed her hold as soon as she saw me. Diego, who was standing close by, went pale and continued pulling at her sleeve. "Honey, don't misunderstand. These people kept making Domi drink. He's had too much. If this continues, he won't be able to handle it. Sis, stop this and let go of him." Chapter 7. Joanna continued to yell her grievances despite everything. Dominic gave me a provocative look. "Don't misunderstand, Romeo. My sister is simply concerned that my excessive drinking is negatively affecting my health." The coworkers around us all changed their expressions, presumably anticipating that I would lose my mind. "She's just worried, that's all." However, I merely smiled slightly. "It's all right. Joanna's brother is you. She naturally cares about you. You two have a wonderful meal." I turned and left, saying, "I'm going to be leaving now because I have something to take care of." However, Dominic stood up and took hold of my arm. "You must believe me, Romeo. Joanna is really just a sister to me. We're completely clean between us," he said, emphasizing the word clean, with a warning look in his eyes. Calmly, I grinned. Why would I think that because I'm older, I can't feel jealous of someone who is so much younger? You're strong and young. Look after your sister well. I shook his hand and turned to leave. All of our coworkers swiftly left the table, leaving just the two of them, because the awkward tension in the air was intolerable. I turned and looked back as I was leaving. I saw a glimmer of regret in Joanna's eyes, but maybe that was just in my head. Perhaps I was merely seeing things. My phone continued to buzz on the way home. Joanna sent out a series of messages. "Don't be angry, sweetheart. Nothing stands between us. You are the one I will always love. Really, nothing happened with Domi. Even if it did, it was only a passionate moment. There are no genuine emotions at play." Calmly, I snapped a screen grab of the messages. Wasn't this her covert admission of cheating? However, her remorse seemed to evaporate the moment I arrived home. Joanna didn't come home again that evening. "I'm taking darling Domi to the hospital because his stomach issue has gotten worse. I'm not coming back tonight." I didn't respond. Rather, I called my best friend and divorce attorney, Cecilia, right away. She wasn't shocked at all when I informed her that I was divorcing. She merely inquired as to whether I was rushing. I said I was. Nevertheless, I made the decision to give Joanna one final look. I informed her that I wouldn't be asking her to leave with nothing, and that it was due to relationship issues. I heard the sound of keys in the door at 2 a.m. She appeared shocked to see me seated on the couch. "I told you not to wait for me, so why are you still awake?" She approached me, leaned in close, and spread her long arms around my neck. She was taking a very active role. This was not like the norm. She used to always object whenever we had an intimate moment. I didn't want to touch her. We have only shared intimate moments once a month, even after 2 years of marriage. I detected a subtle tobacco scent on her as she approached. She didn't smoke, so where did that smell originate? I was so repulsed by her previous relationship with Dominic that I had to push her away. Joanna got upset right away. "You're a man in your 30s, and that won't work in a few more years, so you're disgusted with me now. If you don't have children within the next 2 years, you won't stand a chance." Chapter 8. She grabbed my belt and removed her coat right away. With a composed expression, I firmly grasped her hand. Over the past few years, she has consistently objected whenever I have suggested having children. She would make a variety of excuses to get out of it. Even after 5 years of marriage, we have yet to have children. Her sudden mention of having children made me question her intentions. Tonight, I had too much to drink. "Let's try this again later." She got upset when I turned her down. "I told you we were clean," but I ignored her and was about to bring up the divorce when her phone rang again. "Are you still upset about the situation with Dominic?" It was the only ringtone that Dominic had. "Hi, Domi, how are you?" "All right, I'll be right there." After hanging up, she hurried out of there. "Domi is having stomach issues. I must leave." "Don't get me wrong, I'm just going to go with him because he has stomach problems." I sneered. "Proceed. I won't give it much thought. He is, after all, your younger brother." She hesitated for a moment but remained silent. She hurried out. I ordered the finance team to cancel Joanna's bank cards and pushed for the divorce papers to be finalized right away. The following morning, Joanna barged in enraged as I was talking to Cecilia about the divorce. "Do you realize how embarrassing you made me today, Romeo?" Her eyes widened in shock when she saw Cecilia sitting next to me. "What do you think you're doing? Why did you cancel my bank cards?" "Oh, I see now." I couldn't help but sneer when I heard that you had started an office romance with a man in his 30s and that you were still having an affair. "I want a divorce and will make sure you leave with nothing. I'll also return all the money you spent on this woman." Had she forgotten how she ended up in her current situation? After all, she was merely a worker at my organization. Cecilia lost the ability to hold back before I could speak. "What are you talking about?" "Romeo's desire for a divorce makes sense. You have numerous scars from surgery and you're making a scene." I was astounded by how disgusting it is. Even though I'd known Cecilia for years, I had never seen her this irate. Joanna started to argue again, so I spoke icily. "I have a divorce attorney named Joanna Cecilia. You had better not cause a commotion." She froze when the topic of divorce came up, her eyes widening in shock. "She couldn't comprehend that you wanted a divorce." I wasn't angry anymore, and she was right. Aren't you over it yet? I simply stopped caring. When I pointed to Cecilia, she gave me a document right away. Cecilia had put together a list of every expense Joanna had incurred in the previous year. On Dominic alone, she had spent more than $5 million. I'm not upset. All I asked for was a divorce and the reimbursement of the $5 million you spent on Dominic. Chapter 9. When Joanna heard what I had to say, she didn't react much, but Dominic freaked out. With anxious and guilty eyes, he took Joanna's arm. Joanna became defiant at once. Don't even consider it, Romeo. When did you start being so frugal? In addition, your money is my money. I'm entitled to handle it. She attempted to attack me, but Cecilia intervened and stopped her. Joanna let out a sudden scream during the altercation. Romeo, why are you pushing me? I'm carrying your child, and you're allowing this woman to touch me. Her strong reaction only strengthened my suspicions, which I had already formed after consulting a private investigator. She was expecting a child. Divorce is acceptable. Regarding assets, we will divide them in half. Don't count on me to do anything more. You can take it away from my portion. As if she had already won, she spoke with a sense of superiority. With pride, Dominic put his arm around Joanna's and relaxed. I smiled a little and shook my head. I had originally intended to be lenient toward her. She couldn't blame me for being cold-hearted, though, because she didn't know when to stop. I placed the evidence of her numerous affairs on the table after extracting it. The private investigator I previously hired took these pictures. Since they were displaying their relationship on the internet every day, it was simple to find out where they were. I was taken aback when I first saw the pictures. The once innocent and pure school beauty who had stood in front of me was actually a shameful woman who enjoyed having sex with men. Joanna's face instantly lost its color when she saw the pornographic pictures. Romeo, this is a fake AI face swapping. You're so mean to disparage me in this way. I abruptly cut her off without even trying to waste any more time. Either sign the divorce papers and go or wait for the court to sue you. You have a choice. Joanna's face became pale instead of green. Despite her stupidity, she was aware that she would probably lose everything as a result of her adultery if the court decided. Dominic encouraged her as he stood by. Just sign it, sis. You still own 2 properties, correct? They will be worth roughly $10 million when they are sold. Even after you reimburse him, you will still have $5 million. Joanna gritted her teeth and reluctantly nodded, asking what she had to be afraid of. She threw the pen at me after signing the divorce agreement. Romeo, I'm waiting for the day you ask me to return because without me, your life would not be what it is today. I'll wait to see what woman would want you when you have nothing left. Joanna sold the properties and had over $5 million, so she lived lavishly with Dominic for a while. Their lavish lifestyle was displayed on their social media accounts. However, how long could $5 million really last? Joanna knocked on my door less than 2 months later. No matter how much trouble she caused, I had already told the security guards not to let her in. However, I continued to underestimate her lack of shame. She knelt at the door of my company and screamed as loudly as she could, utterly ignoring the onlookers. Chapter 10. In the blazing sun, her skin was burnt red, and her entire demeanor appeared exhausted. I apologize, husband, but I swear nothing happened with Dominic. You are the only person I truly love. Even Diego, who had observed the scene, didn't consider intervening to request leniency, so I didn't feel any sympathy at all. I thanked Cecilia for her assistance during this time by asking her to dinner in the evening. However, Joanna appeared out of nowhere and fell to her knees with a thud as soon as I stepped outside. Romeo, please don't use this woman to provoke me. I'm your wife. Let's get married again. Her face was marred by tears and her voice was hoarse and choking. I swear I'll love you well from now on and never make you angry again, she said. When she said, I'll have a child with you, okay? I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. In any case, it was obvious that she wasn't truly repenting or acknowledging her mistakes. Was she doing this to give the unborn child a name, or was she attempting to resume the opulent lifestyle of a wealthy wife? She grabbed Cecilia's arm and hurried toward the car, but I didn't notice. Joanna arrived at the company building on time each day for the next few days. She actually went to my parents' house when I didn't reply. However, she had never been liked by my parents. They wouldn't have agreed if I hadn't insisted on marrying her. I am expecting Romeo's child, Mom and Dad. My parents reacted somewhat when I told them she was pregnant, but I could see my face darken. Are you really going to allow your grandchild to be abandoned? Joanna's face turned pale. Do you really need me to ask whose child is inside your belly? I swear, Romeo, I'll break off my relationship with Dominic. My only husband is you. I sneered. I'm not sure where you get the courage to say these things, Joanna. She stayed silent, her tears streaming without a word. Didn't you feel disgusted when you were sleeping with those men? I ejected her right away. However, Dominic appeared out of nowhere and grabbed her by the neck as soon as she stepped outside. Now, you're thinking of having my child call someone else Dad. Dominic grew increasingly irate and gave Joanna a hard slap across the face. You filthy woman, didn't you say you were just pretending to remarry Romeo to get the money and give it to me? The two started fighting after Joanna screamed. However, how could she possibly compete with a man? She was slapped and sent to the ground. Then he glared at me with red eyes. Joanna and I made a mistake, so why won't you accept it? Romeo, you have a lot of money. Why don't you share some with us? I laughed icily. All right, I'll give you cash. But Joanna, I stared down at her rumpled body on the ground. You have two options. Go raise the child with your Domi brother in a rented apartment, or abort the child and remarry me. You have a choice. Joanna jumped to her feet and crawled up to grab my leg as soon as she heard this. In front of money, even her lover's child was viewed as a bastard. Dominic, whose eyes were bloodshot, rushed forward, yanking her hair and beating her with fists and kicks. I'll marry you again. I'll abort this bastard child right now. You're asking for death, fucking slut. You think you can kill me if you abort my child? Now that Joanna was ready to leave him and had no more money, Dominic stopped acting kind. His actual face emerged. Joanna cried out for assistance, but I merely looked on icily. Both of these individuals were willing to sacrifice everything for financial gain. Joanna stopped moving after 10 minutes or so, and blood began to slowly trickle down her thigh. When Dominic tried to run away in a panic, I called security to stop him and called for an ambulance right away. When the hospital's doctor informed Joanna that the child might not survive, she didn't appear sad. Rather, she got excited. Great, Romeo, you'll marry me again now that the bastard is gone. I called the police firmly without saying anything. Dominic received a 3-year prison sentence for causing intentional harm. Joanna's parents, who also weren't one to overlook it, insisted that Dominic cover the costs of the damages. Joanna knocked again after leaving the hospital. Romeo, please let me return home. I know I was mistaken. I can still have a child for you. How ridiculous. I grinned icily. I neglected to inform you, Joanna. The doctor stated that you are no longer able to conceive due to severe bleeding. That is to say, you are no longer able to be a proper woman. Joanna shook her head in shock after freezing. No, I don't think that's possible. I turned to shut the door after slapping the medical report onto the table in front of her. Following that day, Joanna did not return. When her parents realized she had no money, they expelled her. She was in the red light district the next time I saw her. She was sitting in front of a massage parlor flirting with men as they passed, wearing provocative clothing. At last, she had degenerated into this pitiful state. Her eyes glowed when she saw me, and she got up as if to approach me. Take a drive. I gave the driver instructions. I saw Joanna fall to the ground and start crying uncontrollably in the rearview mirror. My life went back to normal after that. Being single allowed me to devote more time to improving myself, and the business continued to make more money. I could only chuckle when I thought about the past. When we were younger, we yearned for security and looked to other people for approval. However, after experiencing this failed marriage, I finally came to understand the situation. Eventually, everything you strive for will come to dominate you. The one who truly loves you, yourself, is the only one who will never turn on you. The past is merely an introduction. The future is what counts, both now and in the future.